All right, well, let's get started. If for any reason the audio isn't working well or something, please just let me know in the live chat. Also, throughout the presentation, if you guys have any questions or anything, please feel free to throw it in the live chat. I do have it pulled up. There is a little bit of a delay between my presentation and my speaking, and when you guys are viewing it, so I will do my best to keep track of the live chat, but just be prepared. Like if you guys throw a question in there, it'll probably be about a minute and a half before I get to see it. But my goal today is really just to give you guys kind of like some fundamental principles and ideas to follow when thinking about which dental schools to apply to, and just some tips on how to evaluate whether or not this particular dental school is a good choice to apply to. Hopefully, by the end of today's presentation, you guys feel a little bit more prepared to dive into building a school list to apply to dental school with. So, real quick, a little bit about me. My name is Tion. I just finished my first year at Rutgers School of Dental Medicine here in New Jersey. So, I'll be starting my D2 year of dental school on August 11th. For my undergrad, I went to Emory University where I studied chemistry. In my free time, love playing tennis, playing golf. I actually did both tennis and golf today, so it was a great day. And I also spent a lot of time serving at my local church with the student ministry, so high school and middle school students. This was just a picture from summer of 2024 where I went to Banff with a couple of my friends. I just want to share real quick my experience and my story behind applying to dental school. So throughout the dental school application process, I applied to 10 dental schools. At the end of the whole process, once the dust settled, I got 5 interview opportunities, and then once the dust settled from that, I got 2 acceptances at the end of the whole process. I wanted to introduce you guys or just remind you guys of the ADEA official guide to dental schools right off the bat. This guide is absolutely amazing. This was pretty much like my I don't know, instruction manual, I guess, on dental schools. And it really was a critical piece of information, piece of data that I used personally when I was preparing my application for dental school. The guide pretty much just gives you a bunch of statistics about all of the dental schools in America. It gives you a ton of different statistics that you can kind of reference and that you can kind of compare your own personal stats to kind of get a feeling of whether or not it would be a good idea to apply to this school. You can find a older version of this guide, I believe the 2023-2024 version, a PDF of that on the DAT Bootcamp study group, found on Facebook under files, or you can purchase the most current version of this guide from the ADA website. I personally decided to purchase the most current version because if you purchase the most current version, you also get access to the online dental school explorer, and that was actually what I used mostly. The PDF document is great, but you have to do a lot of Control F. You have to do a lot of scrolling to really find what you want. But on the Dental School Explorer online, it's you just kind of search the dental school you're interested in doing a little more research on, and you can scroll through the page and take a look at what information they have for you. So here's just an example of a page on the ADEA guide to dental schools. So you can see a bunch of different statistics here, like DAT scores and just a bunch of different stats about that particular school. And it could be really helpful to compare kind of your statistics to the statistics of that school to kind of see how you would stack up against other applicants and students that are currently attending that school. Here's another example of some more data. Here you can see in-state, out-of-state data. So you can see most schools, a lot of schools, heavily accept and have in-state students attend their school. That's the case for Rutgers. I think Rutgers it isn't even super heavy in-state, but a lot of other in-state schools are extremely heavy on in-state students attending. So this is definitely something else you can reference and kind of deciding on which schools you want to apply to. So let's jump into talking about what your school list should be based off of. I think it should be really based off of 2 main fundamental ideas, and those two ideas being schools that want you, schools that you think have a higher chance of wanting you and accepting you and really wanting you to attend, and schools that you personally want. Now, the best is when these two things collide, right? So for me, Rutgers was an example of a school that kind of checked both of these boxes. When I compared my stats with stats of Rutgers students and Rutgers applicants that got accepted on the ADEA guide, I realized that I had a pretty good shot. My stats compared really well to the stats for Rutgers. I also, through a lot of research and just asking around, I realized that Rutgers is a school that I really want to attend. Clinically, Rutgers kind of really emphasizes students developing strong clinical skills. The requirements for graduation for D3 and D4 students in the clinic is a lot higher. You have to do a lot more to graduate at Rutgers compared to like the overwhelming average of dental schools in America. Something that I got to experience after starting and experiencing D1 was getting to work in the pre-clinic and in the sim lab and drill, use a handpiece super early on. So we were drilling into those prep blocks. So it's pretty much just like a little block with some shapes that you can drill out using your handpiece. I was drilling into those the second week of D1. And whereas some other schools, for example, Harvard, you might not be in the sim lab until like halfway through your D2 year. So before we talk about schools that want you, I just wanted to share this quick disclaimer. Dental school applications are extremely unpredictable. You can kind of get a little bit of an idea of what schools are more likely to accept certain students based off of certain application characteristics like test scores, GPA, experiences, but it's just not possible to know for sure which schools may or may not accept certain students. So for dental school applications, I really want to encourage you guys to have the mindset of that there is no safety schools. Even for undergrad, there were a lot of schools that I thought I had a pretty good shot at and I didn't get in. But especially for dental schools, the whole concept of a safety school is not super relevant because of how difficult and unpredictable getting into dental school is. So I'm going to share a couple different factors that you can use to kind of get a gauge on whether or not you have a more likely or less likely chance of getting into a certain school. But please remember that all of these factors are just kind of there to give you an idea. And unfortunately, none of these can be really strong predictors of the results of your dental school application. So some of the different factors include your DAT score, your GPA, whether or not you're applying as an in-state or out-of-state applicant, and the particular values that the school itself has. So let's jump into each one of these with in a little more detail. So for DAT score, just to kind of refresh your memory on DAT scoring in general, the average for like acceptance into dental schools is around a 430. National average is around a 400. Minimum we recommend kind of applying to dental school with to have kind of a shot at getting in is around a 380. Once you get into the high 400, 500s, your score becomes very competitive. So really, if depending on the schools that you're applying to and their average DAT scores of students admitted and students attending, you can kind of take a look at your own personal DAT scores and compare it to that. Usually, if you're anywhere above 500, you'll be pretty competitive at any school. And if you're a little bit lower, you might want to be a little more selective in which schools you apply to really maximize your chances of getting an acceptance. So here's some data taken from the ADEA Guide to Dental Schools from a couple of years ago, just showing some DAT scores. I know now it's out of 600. That these stats are obviously still out of 30. But if we take a look, like let's say my DAT score was a 22. So I would take a look at this list and I would compare myself to the academic averages of the particular schools, and I would also compare myself to the 5th to 95th percentiles. If I'm at or above the 95th percentile for a certain school, then I feel like I am pretty competitive in terms of DAT scores. So if I'm at a 22, then I would say I'm most competitive at Midwestern University, Illinois. since their 99th percentile is right at a 22. Looking at the averages, I think I'd be pretty competitive, have a pretty good shot at Oregon. I'd feel pretty good about LECOM. Harvard, I would feel like that would probably be a reach school for me. So while there aren't really safety schools, I think there are still plenty of reach schools when you're applying to dental schools. So if I wanted to really maximize the chances of getting accepted into schools, just looking at DAT scores, I would make sure that I apply to Midwestern University, Illinois, University of Southern California. That one might be a little tough because the 95th percentile is around a 25, so my 22, while above average, still isn't super great. But that's kind of like how I would look at DAT scores when applying. Now remember, there are a bunch of other factors. So if there's a school that you really, really love and your DAT score is a little bit below that school's average, that does not necessarily mean it's a bad idea to apply, because there are so many other factors in your application that can affect a school's decision. For those of you who, pretty much all of you, I believe, who are applying, actually, I don't know. I guess if you're applying this cycle, you might have a DAT score that's at a 30. But if you just are using like an older version of the ADEA Guide to Dental School, and you want to kind of convert the DAT scores from the scale out of 30 to the new scale out of 600, feel free to take a picture or screenshot of this, just a chart that kind of compares the two scores. So now let's talk a little bit about GPA. The way I approach GPA is very, very similar to the way that I approach DAT score. So I pretty much just take my stats and I try to compare it with the averages of the schools that I'm thinking about applying to. For GPA, the two main GPAs that schools are really going to look at is your cumulative GPA, which includes everything you did in undergrad, and your science GPA, which includes all of your science courses. So these go beyond just the prereqs, like bio, chem, physics, all of those. They also include really any science classes that you took. So I personally took astronomy in undergrad, and that did fall under my science GPA. So similarly to DAT, here's just a chart from a couple of years ago reflecting data of GPAs of particular schools. So the way I would approach this, I would take a look at my GPA. So let's say I have a 3.7 cumulative GPA, and then I would take a look, I would feel pretty competitive for Loma Linda, I would feel pretty competitive for Roseman. Columbia, it might be a reach for me, especially when I look at the 95th percentile. And I would just kind of compare myself and try to use this factor to like weigh out whether or not it's a good idea to apply to this particular school. I would then take a look at how I stacked up DAT score wise, and then like change the way that I perceive a certain school from there as well. Similarly with your science GPA. So now let's talk a little about in-state versus out-of-state applicant. This sometimes could actually be the most important thing to look at when deciding on which dental schools to apply to, because some dental schools almost exclusively accept in-state students. So therefore, it wouldn't really be a super good idea to apply to those schools if you're applying as an out-of-state applicant, unless you extremely love that school, or unless you are extremely, extremely competitive in all of the other factors. So if you take a look here, some schools, the out-of-state acceptance rate is extremely, extremely low. So University of Colorado, 5% out-of-state acceptance rate, very, very difficult. Louisiana State University, 6% out-of-state acceptance rate, extremely, extremely low. Oregon's a little bit higher. So like if you're really wanting to go out of state, this can be definitely an option that you think about. For me, there were some schools that I was thinking about applying to, but then when I looked at their out-of-state acceptance rate, I realized I don't love this school enough to really take that risk, and I'd rather save the $100+ of application fees that I would be spending applying to this school. You can also take a look, this, depending on what state you live in, this could be helpful, this might not be helpful. Taking a look at the in-state acceptance rate to think about which in-state schools you want to apply to. For me, that wasn't as relevant. New Jersey only has one in-state dental school, that being Rutgers. So that was really my only chance to get to apply to a school for in-state acceptance rate. For Rutgers, the in-state acceptance rate is about 20%. So I kind of, when I was applying, I kind of wished it was higher. I would look at schools like Ohio State University. I think Ohio State's like 80% in-state acceptance. So I was like darn. But it ended up all working out for me. Another thing to take a look at is values. So for dental schools, they're really looking for students that would fit in well in their school, fit in well in their curriculum, fit in well with what that school values. So I think it's definitely a really good idea to do a little bit of research on the values that this dental school has, their mission statement, and take a look at your application and just see if your application reflects someone who can further that mission and who can demonstrate those values when you're treating patients at that particular dental school. Because I think that's definitely something that dental schools look at and are looking for. For example, one thing that one specific kind of value for a school is research. Some dental schools are super research heavy, while others all dental schools value research, but some might be super research heavy, while others might be a little bit less intense in their research. So if you're applying to a school that super duper values research, if you have no research experience whatsoever, it could be something that makes you a little less competitive for that particular school. Again, doesn't necessarily mean you won't get in because there are so many other factors relevant, but could mean that you're a little bit less competitive. Whereas if your application screams research and has a lot of research on it, then this school could be the perfect school for you to apply to. So making your list will consist of balancing out all of those different factors that I just mentioned. The best schools are going to be schools where you are competitive in all those different factors: your test scores, your GPA, you're applying in state, you have the highest acceptance chance, or you're applying out of state and that school itself has a high out of state acceptance rate, and your values line up with that particular school. Now let's talk a little bit about schools that you want, because that's what it's about too. It's definitely important to have the mindset of my goal is to get into dental school. My goal is to get into dental school and pursue a career in dentistry. I think especially for something like dental school, your main goal is to pursue a career in dentistry. It's not as much about, for undergrad, thinking about which school would be the most fun, which school, the weather you would like the most. But what you want is definitely still a factor. I definitely applied to schools that were a little bit of a reach, but I just really wanted to try because I really love the school and I would want to go to it. And here are just some different criteria specific to dental schools that you might want to consider when evaluating if this is a school that you want. So let's jump into these. The curriculum can really vary from dental school to dental school. Let's talk real quick about clinical experience. Like I said, most of what I know is pre-clinic experience, so sim lab experience, since I haven't really been in the clinic too much yet. I've assisted a bunch, but I haven't really been too immersed into the clinic. But pre-clinic hand skills experience, I think, is super important. Was super important and is super important to me when considering which dental schools to apply to. Like I said, Rutgers really starts you early with your hand skills and your clinical experience. I started drilling with my handpiece in the sim lab the second year of D1, the second week of D1. So first week orientation, and then literally the second week we started drilling. It was pretty crazy. From what I hear as well, the clinical requirements are also extremely high at Rutgers, which is something that I really am grateful for because I want to do as much as I can in dental school in a learning environment to prepare myself as much as I can to see patients after I graduate in the real world. Like I said, different schools value research differently. So a school that really values research might have more research opportunities. So if you really, really like research, that could be something to look into to see if this is a school that you would want and you would want to apply to. Learning style, this is a big one. Different schools will have different learning styles and learning techniques. Rutgers, for most of our classes, are very lecture based, so we'll get lectures and then we'll get tests on the content. And that's been going really well for me, but for some students that might not be the most efficient way for them to learn. Some schools, I believe LECOM does this. I had an interview there, and I believe they do what I believe they call PBL, so problem-based learning. I think they still have some lectures, but as soon as like their students have like the basic like the fundamental sciences and knowledge, their next classes are more problem-based learning. So instead of having lectures, they'll get case studies, and that's how they learn. They'll analyze, answer questions, and almost treat patients in case studies to kind of learn the content. For my gross anatomy class, we did what our course director called TBLs, team-based learning. And we had TBL documents, team-based learning documents, that we would go through as a team. So we did that rather than having lectures about gross anatomy. So we would, in our team, kind of go through the TBL document, and then we would go in and go into the cadaver lab and dissect and learn that way, and then we would have tests on the content. So we had pretty much no lectures other than like the introductory lecture on day one. Class size is also super important. Class sizes can really vary. They can vary pretty greatly, I believe, from like 40, 50, maybe even 30 students in a class to like 300 to 400 students in a class. At Rutgers, we have about 90 students in our class. And then in our D3 year, internationally educated dentists join us for D3 and D4. So D1 and D2 are classes about 90, and then I'm not sure how many internationally educated dentists join us in D3, but there's a good handful of them where our D3 and D4 year, our class is a little bit larger. I know a school like NYU, it has a pretty big class, and then Harvard has a pretty small class. I believe only around 30. Class size is not just about like social either. It's not just about like socializing and do you do better in like a smaller group or a bigger group? Do you want to meet more people or less people? That's definitely a factor, and that's definitely important. But there are also other things like in the pre-clinic, in the sim lab, do you have your own space? Do you have your own drawers? In the clinic, do you have your own operatory? How does getting patients in the clinic work if there's 300 students? Is there enough patients coming to that dental school for you to have the patients you need to get the work done that you need to graduate on time? So those are all definitely factors to consider and think about. Class size is also important in networking. Like you're making friends with your classmates, but also like if, let's say, you want to specialize and you become a endodontist after dental school, and you kind of you're at a state school, local state school, endodontist, and all your classmates are now opening practices in relatively close areas. Now those classmates are going to be the general practice dentists that are referring patients to you. So that's also really cool and also important to consider depending on what you're looking for. So another thing to think about is location. Part of this is preference, right? Like, do you want to go somewhere warm? Do you want to go somewhere cold? But I think when thinking about dental school for location, it's more important to think about cost of living. Dental school is super expensive already, like for school itself, tuition, fees. You got a ton of fees that cover all your equipment. So like I had a lot of fees for D1, but then we got a lot of stuff, right? We got our handpieces, our articulators, a ton of stuff that we need to learn dentistry and to practice dentistry. But another big cost is cost of living. California, areas in California are definitely going to be more expensive than other areas in the world. New York City is going to be really expensive cost of living wise. And that's definitely important to consider when thinking financially how you want to tackle dental school. And similarly to how we talked about values for from the dental school's perspective and whether or not they want you, it's also important that the values that the dental school has reflects the values that you have. Um, like if again that research example, I need to think of better examples, but the research one keeps popping into my head. But like that research example, if research is super duper important for you, then it would make a lot of sense to me for you to apply to a school that has research because that value that you have is now matched with that school. And cost is super important too. I recommend looking into like the cost of tuition depending on in-state versus out of state, and also like I said when we were talking about location, the differences in living expenses. In-state and out-of-state tuition can be pretty sizably different. It's also important to take a look if you're really interested in out-of-state schools. If it's a state school for that particular state, what is their criteria for offering students in-state tuition? So for Rutgers, pretty much every student after D1, so every D2, D3, and D4 student, almost every D2, D3, and D4 student is paying in-state tuition. Because as long as you establish residency in your D1 year, you can, you're eligible for I apologize. I had a bit of a tech malfunction, so I'm hoping we're back, and I'm hoping you guys can see my screen. Um, Again, I really apologize having a bit of a technology problem right now. Okay, I think we're back. Again, I am so sorry about that. But as I was saying, it's important to take a look at the criteria school has for offering students in-state tuition. For Rutgers, pretty much every D2, D3, and D4 student is given in-state tuition as long as they establish residency in their first year. So like all my classmates are gonna get their like New Jersey's driver's license. They're gonna change their um, residency to New Jersey, and then in starting D2 year, they're paying in-state tuition. Also, it's important to think about how are you going to pay for school? Is it going to be with loans? Is it going to be with other ways? And if you are taking loans, how much debt do you feel comfortable with? Dental school is extremely expensive. As you can see, over the course of all of dental school, the least expensive school can be around 120K, most expensive around 420. And this is kind of dated, so I bet today it's even more than that. I bet like I really do feel like the most expensive dental schools are probably around the high 400,000s, 500,000, maybe even $550,000 dollars. So it's a lot. It's super super expensive, and I know it's a little hard to kind of think about this now because you're applying to dental school. You're going to be a dental student. You're not really thinking about this too much, but it's important to think about how this will affect you in your career and what your intentions are and what you personally are comfortable with. Now, I feel like just a like kind of thought and encouragement to you guys when I was applying to dental school and committing to pursuing this career, the debt kind of scared me. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized like people are still becoming dentists today, so it must pan out. People are still becoming dentists. Dentists, for the most part, live pretty comfortably, so it must pan out. However, I want to be as smart as I can with my money over the course of dental school because each dollar I spend, each dollar I borrow is more than a dollar really because of the interest that comes with it. So another thing to think about when considering whether or not this is a dental school that you want to attend is match rates. Um, Different university will have varying match rates for various specialty programs. And other things to consider about match rates is, does that particular school have specialty programs of their own? This is especially important for exposure. So I have a bit of an interest in endodontics. I'm interested in learning more about all the specialties, and I'm very open to how that might change my interest and what I'm interested in the most. But I do have a bit of an interest in endodontics, and I've already been to the postgraduate endodontics clinic to shadow, just to meet the residents a little bit, to kind of gain their insights and to just observe what they're doing. Now, even if you are not interested in a specialty and matching into a specialty, it could still be a good idea to take a look at the match rates of that school, just to see how students graduating from that school are doing with being successful and what they're trying to pursue. A couple details on how to find information. Exploring school websites is super helpful, especially to kind of get a feel of what the school values. Taking a look at that school's mission statement, their about pages, and just what they're involved in. Different organizations that are involved in, different things that they do annually, can give you a lot of insight into that school itself. Also, don't be afraid to attend school presentations just to learn more about that particular dental school and to reach out to admissions with any questions that you have. Talking to current students and alumni, also super helpful. It gives you definitely a different perspective than if you're talking to admissions or attending like a school presentation. If any of you guys have any interest in Rutgers, I would love to talk about Rutgers School of Dental Medicine as much as you guys want and answer as any questions that you guys have. Also, DAT Bootcamp application services is something I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a second, but they are super, super helpful in just guiding you in this whole process of applying to dental school. When you're thinking about finalizing your school list, here are just a couple things to think about and consider. We definitely recommend applying broadly, meaning about 8 to 12 schools, depending on how your stats are and how competitive of an applicant you are. That could affect how many schools you apply to. If after self-reflecting on all of the different factors we talked about, you feel you're not the most competitive applicant, you definitely want to apply to the more dental schools. So you want to be on the higher end of this range. If you feel like you're an extremely competitive applicant, then maybe you don't have to apply to 16 schools. I do strongly not recommend applying to any less than 8 schools, because that's really just making your chances small and taking a really big risk in doing that. It might pan out, but it is a big risk. I personally applied to 10 dental schools when I was applying. It's also important to balance the schools that you want and schools that are most likely to want you. Now, if you just apply to schools that you feel like have a really high chance of wanting you, that's great, but if you get it, like even if you get into all of them, what if you hate all of the schools that you got into? And similarly, if you only apply to schools that you really love and that you really want, but you're not the most competitive applicant for, what happens if you don't get into any of them? So having that balance is super important, and hopefully you get into a school that at the very least you don't hate. It's also important to eliminate the wrong schools from your list. So for example, after reviewing all of the factors that we talked about, if you feel like you're not the most competitive, your DAT score is below the 5th percentile, your GPA is below the 5th percentile, your values don't really line up with the values of the school, you're applying out of state and the acceptance rate is extremely low, it could be a good idea to eliminate that school from your list. And if you don't even want to go to that school, it could be a really good idea to remove that school from your list. That'll save you money and also save you time in applying. We also strongly recommend submitting your dental school applications as early as possible. Dental school applications are all on a rolling process, so they're reviewing applications as they're coming in. So therefore, like let's say there's X number of interview slots for Rutgers for this cycle. If you apply super early, maybe they've only given out like 10 different interviews. So you still have X minus 10 open interview slots that you are competing for. Now, if you submit your applications later, they're reviewing it later, maybe there's only X minus 100 interview slots left. So there's a lot less interview slots left. So you're kind of competing for a small amount of slots. So that would kind of limit your chances of getting an interview. So all other factors held constant, the earlier you submit your applications, the higher your chances of securing an interview for that school. I also wanted to talk about DAT Bootcamp application services. They are super, super amazing in kind of guiding you and helping you on this journey of applying to dental schools. Some of the things that they could do for you is making a personalized list of schools that fit your values and your application. They have live one-on-one consultations with admissions experts. They can kind of guide you through specific dental schools and explain pros and cons for schools on that personalized list of dental schools list of dental schools that you guys generated together. They are super amazing. There's various different levels of help and guidance that they can offer you, and I'm just gonna throw a link to DAT Bootcamp admission services here in the chat. I definitely recommend checking them out. Let me make sure my link works. Perfect. I definitely recommend checking them out and just seeing how they might be able to help you on this journey. And it's a long journey. I remember being a part of it, and I mean, dental school is its own long journey, but I'm grateful that I'm past the application journey. So definitely check them out and see how you might be able to use them to give you the best chances of getting a dental school acceptance. That's pretty much all I have today. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for being such a great audience. Here's my email. Please feel free to take a screenshot, take a picture of that, and email me anytime. Feel free to send me an email, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys have, whether that be about dental school applications, whether that be about what dental school's like, whether that be about like coursework in dental school, work-life balance in dental school, literally anything that I can help with. Please feel free to shoot me an email. What I love most about doing this and kind of giving these presentations and reaching out to you guys is just being able to help you guys, and I'm hoping today was helpful, and I'm hoping that I can help you guys in any way that I can through email if you guys are interested in that. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have for today. I'm going to hang around a little on the live for questions. Remember, there's a little bit of a delay, so if you throw a question in, I might not see it for like a minute and 30 seconds. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to throw it in the chat. I'm going to hang around for a little. And yeah, thank you guys for being a great audience, and I just hope that this was helpful.